What it do, what it do? It's your boy Andre Spruell, and you are tuning into the Middle of the Fence podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, whether you're listening, watching, or both. As I like to say, time is the most valuable thing on this earth because we can spend it but can't make it back. So as always, thank you for your time, and please be sure to check out the previous episodes if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's get into today's topic. So, because it's summertime, I figured it would be no better time than to delve into the summer experiences in both worlds, one on the tough terrain side and the other on the Affluent Acres side. And summers were a season of contrasts for me growing up. In one world, it was block parties and fire hydrants, not in my community, specifically with the fire hydrants, but mostly in tough terrain neighborhoods. I think of New York City personally. And on the other side of the fence, summers looked like campfires and lake houses or beach homes, because this is primarily set in New Jersey. So again, summers were a window into social class and community culture. And because I spent a lot of my summers on the tough terrain side, let's start there. So, the summertime in the tough terrain, the energy was just different on the tough terrain, and in a good way, right? So, there's just more energy and positivity radiating, and you just hear the music blasting. You smell really good food from the local different types of restaurants, because the food is always better in the hood, and those that know that's good. And just everything else that embodied what it meant to be on the tough terrain during the summertime. And the ice cream trucks, I mean, that's probably on the Affluent Acres side too, but as a kid, growing up on the tough terrain side, anytime the ice cream trucks came, it was like running to find your nearest adult and asking them for some cash so you can get whatever you wanted. I used to get the WWE ice creams, or like the Spider-Man one with like the gumballs for the eyes, sometimes the SpongeBob one too, so don't judge me on that. And when they say on the tough terrain that the block is hot, the block literally is hotter on the tough terrain side than it is on the Affluent Acre side. So what do I mean by that? According to UC San Diego's School of Global Policy and Strategy, and the analysis of remotely sensed land surface temperature measurements of a little over 1,000 U.S. counties, it revealed that in 71% of these U.S. counties, land surface temperatures in communities with higher rates of poverty can be up to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer compared to the richest neighborhoods during the summer months. So that's just a combobulated way of saying that there is scientific proof that it is literally hotter on the tough terrain side than it is on the Affluent Acre side during the summertime. And that's a fact that I didn't even know, to be honest, until I started doing research and preparing for this episode. So if you actually knew that, drop it in the comments, and if you didn't, you learn something new every day, right? And how else did summers look like on the tough terrain side? So a lot of my summers were spent playing basketball as well, because it was a big part of my life. And when I was a youngster, 10, 12 years old, I drilled it into my head that I was going to go pro with it. So a lot of my summers were spent playing on the Amateur Athletic Union circuit, better known as AAU. Played against some NBA players with the likes of Karl Anthony Towns and Kyle Anderson and people like that, which is pretty cool. But once I stopped growing past 5'9", I realized that the basketball dream was not going to happen. So again, But playing basketball in the summer, it wasn't more of like, oh, I'm just being a kid that loves to play basketball. It was operating from the mindset, even as a youngster, that this is a tool for me to be able to go to college for free or go to college for a much cheaper cost to help out my family, because that was such a big priority for them and for myself. And it just speaks to how life was like on the tough terrain. And we didn't really do much traveling on the tough terrain side compared to those on the Affluent Acres side. And the traveling for me and my family, because again, they were making the sacrifice to send me and my siblings to private school on the Affluent Acres side. So they did the best with what they could. So the summer vacations looked more so like going to the beach, a lot of lake days, very, very big on that, especially with my mom's side of the family. And if we did travel, it was usually road trips, driving to like southern states or southeastern states like Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, even did a couple road trips to Florida, but not really flying to different countries or things of that nature. So that's primarily how summer looked like on the tough terrain side, just more so making the most of what you got. And if you grew up in the hood, then you already know everyone is chilling on like their porch and interacting with each other and people walking by and things of that nature. So I wanted to be sure to not leave that out as well. But as soon as the school year ended, I was also stepping into a completely different world, the Affluent Acres summers, right? So the biggest difference with the Affluent Acres summers versus the tough terrain summers is the fact that a lot of children growing up on the Affluent Acres side are actually provided with a lot more structure. So what I mean by that is, so there's a study, and in 2023, 67% of children from upper income households attended at least one structured summer activity, like camps, enrichment classes, or internships, compared to just 38% from lower income families. So I mentioned I played basketball growing up, so in a way that was kind of like my structure during the summer. But on the Affluent Acre side, they're a lot more mindful and purposeful about putting their children in camps, whether it's just the regular camps that we think of when we think of certain movies or sports related or internships, just like how I mentioned. And it makes you think why there isn't as much structure for children on the tough terrain side. And I simply think that it's because of the circumstances that you're provided with, right? Because more often than not, it's either a single parent household or both parents working a lot and working overtime and things of that nature to help provide for their family and their children as best as they can. And school served as that structure. So then once that gets taken out, there really is no other structure like outside of that. So I think that's why there's a difference. But if there's anything else that you guys can think of, I'm definitely open and interested to hearing your guys' thoughts about that as well. Now, I will say, as I got into my teenage years, summer was pretty fun and pretty good on the Affluent Acres side. Obviously being in spaces with people that didn't look like me or didn't necessarily come from the same background more often than not was nothing new to me. But, being able to be on boats and, friends' beach houses and things of that nature, it's a lot of fun, to say the least. It's something that if I never ventured into the Affluent Acres side, I would have never experienced that lens of summer and how that looks and feels like. And I will say that to contrast that, what I enjoyed even more than what most people that primarily grew up on the tough terrain side would consider as a luxury, like being on a boat and in beach houses and things like that. The fact that when I was a kid and teenager, that I was able to do stuff that kids just get to do all the time that I wasn't able to. So, for example, things as simple as riding a bike through the neighborhood, being able to go swimming, being able to go and play at the local parks because of the safety concern on the tough terrain side where I grew up. I wasn't able to do those simple things. And if I did, it would be against my family's wishes, which they were not happy about, to say the least. So it just goes to show that, yeah, although it was great to, and still is fun to do the really nice activities in summer that are considered upper echelon, the back to basic stuff that I was able to do as a child and teenager on the Affluent Acres side compared to the tough terrain side, that's what I enjoyed most about the summertime. And I will say that how I felt about how my summers were spent on the tough terrain compared to how they were spent on the Affluent Acres side. Growing up, I used to be embarrassed and used to dread the first day back at school after summer, because when I would go back, a lot of the kids were talking about, oh, I went to Italy, I went to Greece, or a state that's actually really, really cool to go to. No offense to the states that I mentioned earlier that my family took me to, because again, we created core memories, but it's like their summers were structured and they got to really travel for the most part. And so when those experiences were talked about and shared, I would always feel lesser than in those moments when I shouldn't have in the grand scheme of things. But it's just it's just how I felt. And switching between these worlds wasn't just about location. It was about shifting who I was and what I understood about life. So bridging the gap between both worlds in a summer type of setting. So the best way that I was able to do this, and it's going to be a pretty funny way to say this, but for a 4 or 5 year stretch, I used to throw one annual summer banger on the tough terrain side in the hood of Orange at my house, and would have a bunch of kids from the Affluent Acres side and kids that grew up in my neighborhood all together in one space. And to this day, people still talk about those parties. So I had one senior year of high school, my graduation party, and then 2 in the summertime being home from college, like 2 or 3 being home from the summertime in college. And although it's funny to like look back and realize, wow, there's, a bunch of kids from the Affluent Acres that are in my actual home and environment, it was cool to see both worlds come together in one space and genuinely enjoy each other's company and have a great time. And that, honestly, even though it sounds so silly as a way of that bridging the gap, what other representation has there been of that type of magnitude? Unless it's people unifying to protest for something like the Black Lives Matters movement a few years back. Outside of that, to have a shared space where people from the Affluent Acre side and people from the tough terrain side can come together as one and genuinely interact with one another and enjoy each other's company was just really, really dope to see. Because people from both worlds come together for live events like concerts and sporting events, but those events are so large and with tens of thousands of people that you really don't have a chance to interact with other people there. And more often than not, in those large group settings, you tend to go with your own group and tend to only interact with one another and maybe interact with like the people next to you for like a little bit. So I thought that was pretty cool. And navigating between both environments, the biggest thing that I was concerned about was, what am I going to wear based off of where I was going to be at, right? And this was the era This was the dreaded Sperry's and Nike Elite era. So, for those that remember that dark time, it was a dark time to say the least. But again, like, I had to find an outfit that would work best on both sides. And growing up, especially during my teenage years, it was a polo, some shorts, Nike Elite socks, and Sperry's, because again, when you have to try to fit in two different worlds at the same time, you don't want to dress so differently that it takes you away from who you are at your core. And don't stalk my Facebook page because you will find those pictures of the Nike Elites and Sperry's and polo combo. So, when I look back now, I realize summers were less about where I was and more about what they taught me. And again, summers weren't just a break from school. They were lessons in adaptability. And for those that are listening and watching, I pose you with this question. What did summers teach you about your own world? I'd be very interested to hear what you guys have to say for that. So, again, please be sure to drop that in the comments or shoot me a DM or whatever you feel most comfortable with, because I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And thank you guys for tuning into this episode. If you like this episode, please be sure to follow, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming platform, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you're more of a visual person, please be sure to check us out on YouTube and be sure to like and subscribe. And while you're at it, please be sure to hit the little notification bell so you can be the first to be notified when the latest episode drops. And again, no matter what side of the fence you grew up on, we're all more alike than we think. My name is Andre Spruell. Catch you guys next time.